Perfect. So what is EDGE? EDGE is a vibrant community of people from all backgrounds and walks of life who believe entrepreneurship can make lasting change in society. We support changemakers as they explore entrepreneurial approaches to create a more equitable and sustainable world. In collaboration with our partners, EDGE provides a new and growing venture with mentorship, learning programs, and support to access funding. EDGE is a gateway to Sheridan's innovative resources and offers physical and virtual communities where impact entrepreneurs can thrive. And then a little land acknowledgement. We like to acknowledge that the land in which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wanda, the Métis, and the Mississauga of the First Credit Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous indigenous nations and indigenous people have lived and passed through this territory. We recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish of One Spoon Treaty and the Two Rampan Treaty, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respect of relationship. Sheridan affirms that it's our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who are yet to come. We are grateful for this opportunity to be working and living on this land. So a quick Zoom orientation. Please ensure that your mic is muted to ensure that there's no background noise. And also webcams are not mandatory, but encouraged so we can see everyone's beautiful faces. If you have any questions, there is a chat function at the bottom of your screen. You can private message me if you have any issues, but also message the chat if you can't go on with your voice. And then for our agenda today, we just did the welcomes and introductions, and then we will move on to Q&As. But to introduce myself, I am Tiana, and I'm the business support specialist at EDGE, and I'm here to help with the back end things. So if you have any questions, please message me. So for those of you who don't know, EDGE is an entrepreneurship and discovery growth engine right outside of Sheridan College. We empower those who connect creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We strengthen the regional innovation ecosystem through collaborations and impact entrepreneurs' expertise. We also provide inclusive support to impact entrepreneurs while offering mentorship, learning programs, co-working space, and funding. And lastly, we connect entrepreneurs to Sheridan's talents, expertise, and resources. So these are several of our programs where we engage our entrepreneurs in hopes to build their ventures. Within these 4 programs, there are Explore, Leap, Rise, and Soar, where it starts from the ideation process of your venture all the way to scaling your venture to ensure growth. I would like to give a warm welcome to Amy. She is the founder and CEO of Recreational Respite. She is disability and passionate about inclusion. She is committed to removing barriers to those with disabilities face in their communities to provide active and inclusive participation. She also has a sweet golden retriever at home, which might make an appearance here and there. So that's a fun fact about her. And our mentor, Diego, he is a social entrepreneur, consultant, and community builder, advisor, and mentor. He currently leads the mentorship program and mentors the social purpose organization at EDGE. So I will pass it on to Diego.
Thanks so much, Tiana, for that warm welcome and introduction and for just getting us going. Welcome, everyone. Before I start, I'd just like to address that we've got folks coming in from Ireland, California, Northern California. So it's great to see from Mississauga as well. Shout out to Mississauga, and it's amazing to see a group coming from different parts of the world. And so with that said, what we're going to do today is we're going to hang out with Amy. We're going to get to know her journey and ask her some questions. Get the folks on today's session to ask some questions. There were some questions that were submitted as well, and so we'll take those up. And so, without further ado, let's let's get things going. And again, Amy, welcome. Thanks so much for making time today to come in and share your journey. And with that, tell us about you and tell us about recreational respite and
Yeah,
yeah, describe
truly.
your experience with entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Thank you. Truly my pleasure. I love everything about entrepreneurship. And probably what I love most is meeting other entrepreneurs. I was just saying to Diego before we started that, even just before COVID, entrepreneurship can be such an isolating place where you don't often connect with a lot of entrepreneurs because you're so entrenched in your thing, right? You're so entrenched in building and monitoring and managing, and you often are a little bit removed sometimes from social connectivity. And so it's a wonderful space to be here to talk to you guys. I'm more of a nature. I like the fireside chat idea, not so much me lecturing about all about me, but I will definitely share sort of where I started and where we're at now as a national organization. And then I super encourage any questions or even just conversations that you want to have about sort of where you're at in your journey or what you're looking for or what you're hopeful for. I saw some things in the chat too. So in 2008, I started recreational respite. I have a cousin with severe disabilities, and at the time she was 22. Our family really didn't have her diagnosed in a very sort of, driven medical model, if you will. And so at that time, we struggled to help identify what her interests were and her needs were. And she said to us, the only thing she wants is to know where her sense of role and worth was. Um, and as tragic as that was, that she didn't know that at 22, it was because there really wasn't any services that were navigating those spaces, identifying the barriers that existed and then working to help her remove them through recreation, participation, community engagement. So recreational respite came about. The easy answer is that way. I had been a rec therapist in a community hospital, at Bridgepoint Hospital in Toronto, and had worked with a variety of individuals who were being discharged home. And one of the gaps that I noticed was that as much as they had all of their medical professionals, their occupational therapists and their physiotherapists and their doctors and their social workers, when they were being discharged home, they were being discharged home to figure it out when they got home, right? And so they struggled to really integrate themselves back into their own families and back into their own workplaces and back into their own communities and old interests and hobbies. And so I really recognized that there was a great big need in the community for this kind of support. So that was the other reason why I said, you know what, we're going to do it. And at the time I had a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. And so I thought it was a good time to start a business. And for anyone that has children, it was probably a little bit of a crazy decision, but it worked out in the end, and I'm happy for it. So here we are in our 13th year, and we started just offering in-home services. So a team of recreation therapists were coming to us. It was just me actually answering the phone and answering inquiries and then meeting with families and then implementing service. And at the same time, I was scrubbing toilets to make ends meet for cash. True story. And I used to take my little baby with me in her little carrier seat to cleaning clients. And I would sit her in her seat and talk to her and clean people's houses and make cash. And all the while answer the phones when they would ring and the inquiries would come in. And so that's what I did for probably a year and a half until I finally realized that maybe if she went to daycare, it might be more helpful. So she started going to daycare and I fully took charge and full throttle forward. And what that did was it started to create space for hiring more people to help with the one-to-one needs. And then we started developing group programs that we were offering in the community. And somewhere in all of that, we identified that there was a real need for caregiver support. Family members were coming to us often in crisis. Their loved ones were obtaining our services, but they really weren't getting a lot of direction and support. There's a huge gap in this space. And so I co-created an organization called Caregivers Unite, Family Caregivers Unite. in 2009, and we quickly launched it into iTunes and satellite radio space, which this was before podcasts. And we ended up with over 1 million listeners worldwide just from our recorded episodes. There were, I think in the end, there were over 300. And what we would do is we'd start to connect with professionals in various spaces, schizophrenia, it comes to mind just because they were so active with us, wanting to tell their stories and connect with other people. And we did interviews with nurse practitioners that were in long-term care, and we did interviews with family members who were in caregiving roles. And so these talks, these stories that we were hearing really helped also us build more of what we needed to be injecting into our services, but also connecting people who were otherwise very isolated in their caregiving roles. And that continued until about 2014. And then podcasts started to kind of come about, and I couldn't manage it all at that time. And so we still have recorded episodes, but I had to focus my attention on the actual business and being in the business a little bit more. So come 2014, I started getting phone calls from places all over the world to come and speak in public spaces and keynote speakers. And what they were calling about was, how do we identify the needs of those that we serve? How do we develop programs that are appropriate? And how do we monitor and manage their successes? So we started to evolve a little bit more in the sense of developing metrics. You know, how could we make sure that these programs were quality, the services were being implemented with quality and care, and then how were we assessing them in the end to make sure that the organization we were working with would sustain that model beyond us, because obviously we couldn't stay working with them forever, and that wasn't the goal. The goal was sort of a short-term relationship to get them to where they needed to be. And then that all started to bloom internationally. And I started to travel to a new country pretty much every 2.5 months for 5 years after that. It was a whirlwind. And all the while, you know, I had growing children and services and a growing team of rec therapists. And then in 2017, we went national. And that was another exciting chapter, because we knew what started to happen was we started getting family members calling us from other provinces saying, you know, you support my dad who lives in Ontario, but can you come and support my niece or my nephew with autism in Winnipeg? Or I have another loved one in Nova Scotia and they need support too. And we love what you're doing with my dad in Ontario. And so that started to sort of plant the seed for expansion. And so we went national in 2017 and started to get everything going, and then COVID. So COVID, obviously the nature of our services are in-home, right? And so we halted in-home services very quickly, and we knew that the families that we were serving were so vulnerable and in even more crisis, and still are. And so we needed to come up with a solution that was safe. And so we started to develop these virtual group programs that encouraged recreational participation. And that started to evolve into recognizing that young adults needed space to learn independent skill mastery and be, as parents would say, we want them to be productive during this lockdown time. So we don't want them just engaging in recreation programs. We want them learning new skills. We want them interacting with other people. So our virtual programs commenced, and they started to evolve rapidly. I would say in 7 business days, my amazing team and I created an entire virtual calendar for the month of April and gave it away for free. It wasn't something that we could financially afford to do, being that we're a social enterprise. We're not funded, and we're not recognized for any allocations for funding or grant dollars. So it was complicated. And we gave it away because we wanted people to stay connected, because it was a hard time for everybody, I think. So, you know, here we are a year later, we've evolved these group programs. And now not only do we deliver these amazing virtual group programs, but we partner with other organizations who actually adopt some or all of our programs every month and put them into their own calendar so that they can maximize their own virtual calendars by utilizing our capacity and our team members. So that's kind of where we're at. It's been a busy 13 years. I don't even remember a time that I sat and twiddled my thumbs or thought, what do I do next? I think it was just a natural progression of like, the customers need this and the families are demanding this. And so what do we do to address this and how do we make it happen? There's a lot of fly by the seat of our pants, but successfully. I mean, it was great, and it was a wonderful experience with my team to grow and flourish and do all of the amazing things that they do right now to date. That's kind of how we got here.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. That's such a powerful journey, and there's just so many dimensions that we can get into, and I think just your energy and your like the way you speak about the process and the journey is something definitely to explore more. And with that in mind, I wanted to maybe take you back to the first couple of years. And oftentimes, most times, I'd say when you're starting, especially a social impact organization, and combine it with the challenges around entrepreneurship, there's this aspect of the mindset, right? And during that starting phase, can you walk us through how you approach thinking about building and overcoming adversity?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of uncertainties. First of all, there's a lot of risk, and there's a lot of unknowns of what to do and how to set up your company, even just to begin with, right? And so for us, it was a matter of what makes the most sense in terms of, our team is growing, we have amplified need, we've got a lot of customers, but also remember that the nature of what we do was very pioneered. I mean, there wasn't anyone doing what we were doing or continue to do now. There are elements that other organizations do the same, but the scope of practice that we have now is truly pioneered. And so it was complicated then. The real barriers was actually understanding the disability sector. And I'll explain a little bit here too, because I think it's important. Disability, the way we look at it, is anyone that faces barrier to participation. So it is not necessarily intellectual or developmental disability. It can be an individual with Alzheimer's disease, or a military member with post-traumatic stress disorder, or a child with autism. So the scope of practice is very, very large. So understanding that not a lot of people value, or the field of recreation is very represented in this space, because we were pioneering this concept. So it was complicated to just make a cold call and say, hey, this is who we are and this is the services that we provide. Because a lot of people would go, I don't get it. Can't, personal support workers provide that? Can't care aid workers do the same thing? So it was this constant educational process, right? Of this is who we are, this is our capacity, this is our skill set. So that was probably the biggest space that we had to maneuver through first. And we still do to this day, honestly. I mean, it's still a very undervalued and underrepresented space to be. But it's funny, because now that we've all been in isolation for the last year, we all recognize what it feels like to be isolated. And our disabled community experiences this every day and have for decades. And so, it's hopeful that we'll realize that this has got to change, and that it's really important to be connected to people.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest part. And then, of course, just the setup, organizing new team members and hiring and trying to be everywhere at once in all of those capacities was very complicated too.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely a message of hope is an understanding, um, especially when you mention the experience of feeling isolated.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so powerful, uh, so powerful to say, and the one thing as well that I just curious to hear your take on is what has allowed you to stay motivated, especially with all the ebbs and flows that happens within social enterprise, but also obviously with the conditions that we happen to be in right now with COVID-19.
Yeah. So, I mean, the motivation, as an entrepreneur in general, is always passion. 100%. You are always passionate about what you're doing beyond how anybody else feels about what you're doing. And that's a weird space too, because, you know, as entrepreneurs, you probably already experience, you get so excited about the work that you do and you want to tell everybody. And then you get some people that are like, wow, that's amazing. And other people that go, oh, cool. And yet, you know, you're so entrenched in this 24 hours a day, right? So the mindset you have to be in is purely motivation for your own passionate drive to see the change, make the change, be the change. 100%. As cliche a little bit as that may sound, it's 100% true, because nobody else is going to do it, right? And so keeping in that mindset, you know, even 13 years later, has driven me in all kinds of pathways. You know, somewhere in amongst all of this, just to share a little bit of personal story, which I think is important because it also helps drive our entrepreneurial path. My mom had breast cancer. I lost my partner to suicide. And I was a single parent for 4 years out of all of this journey. And so, you know, the kind of resilience that you experience from those kinds of tragedies while you're trying to manage building a business and keeping front and keeping strong and understanding that all that work still has to be done, regardless of what you're going through. So it's a tough time to balance the boundaries. As an entrepreneur, boundaries are very, very hard too. So your mindset has to be prioritizing what's important to you and funneling it as good energy as opposed to the bad that can come from all of the terrible experiences that you're having outside, like in life. You know, life happens still while you're building a company, right? So resilience is powerful too. Resilience is powerful, but drive and motivation is probably the biggest one for me.
Wow. It just the voice of strength
Mhm.
that you have is extremely empowering and inspirational, especially through the losses and the message of resilience is something that I'm sure will speak to the folks who are here, but I'm sure the folks who tune in to watch the recording. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that personal story.
Yeah.
Um, and so with that, I want to maybe shift into the direction of your views now on social enterprise. I'm sure back then it's it wasn't a buzzword as it may be
Yep.
now, right? And so, tell us a little bit about the then and the now in terms of your views on social enterprise.
Yeah, 100%. So back then, social entrepreneur was not a thing. I'm going to tell you right now. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was discussing it. Nobody really knew what it meant. And so it's funny because it was actually another organization that said to me, well, you know, you being a social enterprise, I mean, that everything you do, everything you generate, you put back into the organization for the better good. That's, you know, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I always just thought I was a for-profit organization. Like, what do you mean? What makes this different? And so what's really interesting about the social enterprise space versus the old devilized for-profit space is that there is a distinct difference between how you manage your revenues. And I always used to say, you know, our prices are very transparent. So you can have a look at everything we do and everything we charge, and you'll see exactly how much revenue we generate as an organization based on that. And so, you know, being able to be transparent as a social enterprise is important, and understanding that the key is that everything you're doing in the community, everything you're putting out, that you're taking back, that you're putting back out again. And so it's that evolution constantly of like, how can we enhance the community? How can we provide for the community or lead the community in the work that we're doing? And a lot of our partnerships stem that way too. You know, the military would hire us to develop some of their programs. And they would say, we want to implement the programs, but we don't know how to develop or identify the need for the programs. So we need your help there. And so when you start connecting all of these sort of tentacles, you realize that this is the social impact that you're talking about. This is the way that you are a social entrepreneur. And so back then, yeah, I mean, I just kept thinking I was a terrible person for starting a for-profit organization. And until this one day, this colleague was like, yeah, but you don't generate, like you're generating enough to put back in. So you're a social enterprise. Oh yeah, guess we are. And it's
That's
thought kindlier, I think, these days of being a social enterprise as opposed to a for-profit, which is unfortunate, but yeah,
yeah, that's super interesting. You bring
yeah,
that up, the evolution of the perception
yeah,
of what
yeah,
it was then and what it is now, and even the word kind. It's interesting because you were back then you were thinking like this is wrong. This is no. What am I doing? And then all of a
right,
sudden, that sort of shift in the thinking about how to,
right,
especially when you mention how to be transparent in the
yes,
way you bring in the revenue, and how you look at the way you do things beyond just profit, right? Beyond
totally,
that, building partnerships and doing things that are, multidimensional with the scope of social
yeah,
impact, which is amazing. And so, with that in mind, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the recognition of the problems that you, or the problem that you found you wanted to address. Walk us through that process when you were, in the early stages. You were looking at, trying to better validate this problem that you picked up on, an opportunity as well, right? How do you approach getting validation so that you could then develop your products and your service or your services?
yeah. So it's an interesting conversation because it's important to understand that the work that we do is very social model based in a very predominant medical model service. So what that means is that for those that aren't in the industry, aren't in the field in healthcare, is that we were and still in many respects continue to be up against the idea that medicine was the healer, the fixer, the curer, whereas our approach and services is not about fixing because we don't feel like they're broken, right? I mean, the elements of who we serve is different, obviously, too, right? We're not working with medically fragile individuals. We're working with individuals who have challenges emotionally and socially for the most part, right? And so the social model of the services we provide has not always been valued as important over the predominant medical space. And so being in that space constantly, again, back to the educational piece about no, but we want to work collaboratively. You know, you're managing the symptoms, but we want to make sure that individual has a sense of role and worth. And so that's a complicated space to sort of constantly teeter, and we're still doing it. Like it's not gone away because medicine's been pretty prevalent for a long time. um anyway, sorry, I think that pulls us back around, but that's another issue that we've had to kind of be aware of, and
Right,
then
right.
constantly try to navigate through that space creatively, authentically, and partnerships and relationships too have helped with that.
It certainly sounds like throughout that process there's a lot of learning, a lot of conversations, a lot of um, you know powerful conversations that ultimately lead you to define what your services will be, or whether that is the the right approach, and just a lot of insight gathering. And it seems like it's an everlasting loop. You're always learning, right?
Constantly. And the other thing as an entrepreneur too is that if you are constantly learning, but you're also taking away constantly from other organizations similar to yours. Competition is very, very healthy. Competition tells you exactly where your competitor is in that space, and it also gives you insight as to how they're doing things and how you're doing things, and maybe how you can do things better or how they do things better, and how it's constantly that healthy competition. When we're kids and we're in sports and people say it's good, healthy competition, it's good, healthy fun. It's the same thing applies in business. So take it as an opportunity to learn always, no matter what situation. The hardest situations can give you the best places to learn from.
Yeah.
Truly, truly.
Yeah.
So
That's
navigating that constantly is being flexible and adaptable, and all of those things are really important and critical. Being critical of yourself, your operations, your practice, um, and of your own business, is also very important, because sometimes we get so wrapped up in it, we just think it's the best way and we just keep rolling with it. And then all of a sudden we get halted in a path, and we go, whoa, wait a second, that's not going to work. Like, I like the idea, but that doesn't really, it's not very inclusive. It doesn't include other people. How will it reach a broader audience? These things. So be critical too, always, in a healthy way.
yeah, that's extremely powerful and insightful because I'm thinking when you start to grow, maybe you can do you think that this concept around the silo tends to be a bit more prevalent when you grow, and you then don't look beyond what's happening out there, and then make some decisions that maybe don't align with what's really happening in the industry. And so what's
Yeah.
your take on as you were growing, how were you able to keep communicating with your team, or the people that you were working with to make decisions? How did you manage to work your communication in the organization?
Yeah, silos are a big problem for entrepreneurs. I think in a couple of ways. So one, when we are entrepreneurs, we tend to become our own silo for a long time, until we realize that we actually need a more interdependent system to be successful, meaning that we need to be able to rely on other individuals, other organizations, other programs, other thought process, in order to be better at our own. A perfect example for us was in COVID, when we could no longer offer in-home services, and we thought, okay, well, we've got group programs. Okay, but how can we reach a broader audience with group programs? But here's the other thing we were recognizing, is that other organizations, for example, community living, had been offering day programs up until that point. And all of a sudden, they could no longer offer day programs. So they came to us and said, hey, we love the virtual group programs. How can we work together? And instead of us saying, no, no, we do that already, right? We'll do us and you do you. We said, yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to work together, to build on each other's skills, to support each other's customers and members and individuals on a broader scale. That's the thought process that we've got to have outside those silos. Um, Silos create barriers. They create barriers to the services you want to provide or the products you want to create. Um, they also create roadblocks. And so, when times like this, when a pandemic comes and you want to reach out to some other organizations to say, help, we need each other right now, they go, forget it, man. Like, you weren't interested in working with us before. Why would we work together now? Right. So, constantly developing those interdependent relationships is so critical, and it will make you better for it. It'll make you a better entrepreneur, and it'll make you a better partner for other people too.
Yeah,
Um,
a message of co-creation
yeah,
is
100%.
what
And
I'm.
that will bring cohesion, and so we have a number of partners in the community, and we all serve each other in very different capacities. Some organizations benefit from us by utilizing our programs. We benefit from them, from learning more about their participants, so that we can build better programs. Some organizations, like Champions for Life, who I know is on the call, they have a number of resources in a space of physical literacy programming, and we don't, but we have programming. So we've utilized using their tools to implement into our programs, and they're learning more about the space that we work with children with disabilities in their programs. So we're just, and none of that is costing money, right? That's the other thing. All of that is doing is causing beautiful relationships long term, and it doesn't cost a cent. So that's the other thing as an entrepreneur. Be really, really cognizant of who you're building relationships with, and build as many as you can.
Yeah,
Silos, no silos.
Yeah, it makes so much sense from the aspect of community building, co-creation, finding alignment, and
Mhm.
just figuring out capacities that other organizations may have that it may be great to ally with. And so super powerful in just this in the message of figuring out ways to co-create and community build at the same time.
Mhm.
With that in mind, I wanted to maybe pause and we'll shift into some of the
Yeah.
tips and tricks
Yeah.
of the resources that you find helpful. You found helpful then, you find helpful now as you sort of continue to grow. But I wanted to pause for a moment and maybe open up the virtual floor for anyone that wants to jump in and just make some comments, ask some questions, share some even some of your personal journey and insights. And sure, go right ahead if you just want to make your unmute your mic.
Hi, Amy. I just had a question. You had mentioned earlier about transparency and, you know, about the fees and how you're making it completely transparent to customers, and, what they're getting into. Just wondering what other areas perhaps you showed transparency and what key areas would be really great to show customers, for them to gain your trust. A little background about what I'm working on is I'm a speech and language therapist, and I'm working on an interactive platform for children with autism. So, working on areas of deficit like language, eye gaze, and predominantly the key area I'm interested in is in voice, as far as vocal intonation, and assisting a bit with that, and just key areas in social skills as well. So, it'd be great to get your thoughts and advice on that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so great work, very important, considering we're in similar spaces. But in terms of the entrepreneurship side, I mean, your transparency, your authenticity, and your honesty with your customers is really, really key. Remember that this is more about relationship and not about a sale, as far as I'm concerned, in healthcare especially. So, it's more about how they see you and how they value the work that you're doing. And remember too that a lot of our families, particularly in healthcare, they don't know what they don't know. So as much as they know they need a speech language pathologist, for example, they don't know what that means in terms of its capacity. So always take the opportunity to educate them and bring them in, not just as a provider, but as an equal, give them the information that you are going to be doing. For example, this is the service I provide, this is what it looks like, and this is my end goal. And I want to know what your expectations are, family, loved one. I want to know what your expectations are, individual, right? And include them in the entire process and then deliver what you're best at. But they're always a part of that step. They're always a part of everything that you're doing. And that's really, really important. The only thing they don't need to know is how you run your business necessarily, right? But when you're delivering a service, they need to know what that service looks like. How does it benefit me? Why would I want it? Why do I need it? Because remember, they don't know what they don't know. And also in our space, remember that they are the professional caregiver. 24 hours a day, they're with that loved one. They're going to know more about their needs than you will, always. You're going to know how to apply those tools and strategies better than they do in some cases, but they're going to know that individual better. Does that help, Shiva?
Yes, thank you so much. And exactly, and it's things that I do see working with patients, and just explaining to the parents what's going to happen, what are the targets and why, and yeah, so kind of, I guess, putting that specifically into the program as well, so they can see, and having that parent communication, because the parent or caregiver is with them 24/7 exactly.
Right.
And I want to make their lives easier, not harder. So definitely.
Remember that you're part of the team, right? You're not the team, you're part of the team, the entire team all the time.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. It's great. Great work.
That was a great question, Shiva. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was so great to hear that question because it addresses how human centric your strategy should be. It's always about analyzing your stakeholders or the community actors, and that includes, of course, those who you are serving, your beneficiaries, your customers. And so it's a super powerful question because of that concept of human-centric approach.
The other thing I just want to add to that, and in general, remember that our customers are the reason that we are, right? So without them and without their needs, we don't offer anything, right? We're not good at anything without being able to support them. And in addition to that, inclusive language is really, really important. So I'm also a disability studies scholar. Um, and about to endure in a master's program in counseling in the same space. And one of the very first things that was so important was nothing about us without us. So for anyone that is serving individuals in healthcare, inclusive language is so critical. You know, the old way that we would, even myself, when I first started the organization, I would be speaking about patients and clients and very medical, because that was kind of where I was right at that time. But our customers are very intimidated by that sometimes. They just want to be Bob and Brian and Jenny, right? They don't want to be anyone's patient or client, because it sometimes implies that they need fixing or that they're broken. So I think it's important also as an entrepreneur to just understand the language that your customers are comfortable with and use that language. You know,
So
if that, does
important.
that make sense?
Oh,
Especially for those that are in healthcare. Yeah, really important.
so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, super powerful insight there as well. Um, yeah, anybody else would like to jump in?
Oh, David's trying to unmute.
Thank you, Diego, for hosting this. And I've known Amy only for a few months now, and I saw that she was going to be on. And I'm the executive director and founder of a charity called Champions Life Foundation. And Amy and I were connected. We met on LinkedIn, and she was really on it as a social entrepreneur, saying, hey, how could we talk and meet? And we were both kind of engaged in the same way to try to do good. So my charity helps children in low socioeconomic schools to develop their physical literacy. Amy had an interest to, well, in the services of recreational respite, there's physical activity and movement. So we actually coordinated to share, and there was no exchange of money or anything, just exchange of knowledge and positive energy. We were developing an inclusion resource for, well, not necessarily an inclusion resource, but a resource to allow all the participants to be able to take part in our program with some best practices. And then we were able to deliver a workshop with Amy's staff. So that was fantastic. And I look forward to our next, the next thing we do together. So I just want to say a call out to Amy for her incredible energy and her passion to share. And, you know, with what we're doing, you know, we're connecting with our values and our missions, and it just makes things much more powerful when we work together this way. So partnerships is a very, very important thing when it comes to, you know, being an entrepreneur. You're helping your clients, but at the same time, you know, you need to put yourself out there. You need to be bold and share what you have, because, you know, to keep something to yourself and say, oh, someone may copy me, or, you know, there's so much more to gain. And, you know, if, as an entrepreneur, you just keep pushing forward and forward and forward, you know, it's so much easier to lead than it is to follow. You know, when you're following, you're looking at everybody else. But when you're leading, everybody's looking at you and kind of trying to stay behind. So it's not a competition thing at all. It's more a question of, you know, where you want to go. You set your strategy. You know, build your mission, whether it's a BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal that you want to achieve 10 years from now, or, you know, whether it's a 3-year plan, just keep pushing forward. And I definitely Amy's a great example of a super social entrepreneur.
Super social. I need a funny cake.
That's great. David, thanks so much for that
Thanks,
energy
David.
and those comments. That's it's amazing to hear your perspective and comments around just the work that Amy's doing, and just overall inspirational for everyone else that's here, and everyone else that's going to view this. So that message around partnerships and passion, and just connecting with others, and it's great to hear the work that you're doing as well. Um, yeah, so I guess we'll shift to some of these.
Can I ask a question as well?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks. Sure. Sorry, I'll put on my video. Hey, I just had a question. So I'm doing an e-learning site, and so it's basically preparing grade 7, 8, and even grade 9 students for grade 9 math, because there's a lot of math anxiety. And so my question for you, as far as pricing, right? Like, how do you do your pricing? Do you do it so that the venture is self-sufficient, and then later on you can do more good, or do you try to do it the price point so it's low so that you can get as many people as possible, but then it might not be sustainable, right?
Right.
So it's a careful balance between the two. And so I just wanted to get your take on what's your thought process as far as pricing, because if it's too cheap, then it's going to collapse upon itself. And if it's too expensive, then you won't be able to reach to people you want to.
Yeah.
But maybe you have to put your business hat on first and say, listen, just make it a self-sustaining business first, and then,
Yeah.
do the charity stuff. Or the
Super important question. And I'm so glad you asked it, because I know that when we first started business, we pointed at the amount hourly rate that we would need basically to start developing some revenue. The challenge with starting where we needed to be as a business was neglecting the idea that those we served didn't have access to that kind of dollars hourly to pay for our services, because a lot of our customers have funding dollars. So understanding your client base in the sense of who is going to be paying. Is it parents? Is it going to be, is it covered by some kind of benefit or funding that children have with disabilities, for example, or if not, would our parents going to be paying out of pocket? Is it a tax write-off? Is there some benefits that you can attach to your price point? And then understanding that you can put your price wherever you need it to be, but people have to be able to pay it. And that's the really hard shift. So what we ended up doing, I'll be completely honest with you, we had a price point that we ended up keeping there for 8 years. And then we shifted down a little bit, and we started to get a couple more customers, and we shifted down by $7 during COVID. And now we are busier than we have ever been in 13 years. So there's a hard balance with understanding that cheaper is better for your customer, but how much do you need to survive as a business? But also, how can you diversify your services so you can generate revenue in other ways? So is the service you're providing to those grade 7, 8s very specific, or can you bridge it with partnerships with other organizations? What do they want? What would those organizations want from you? Why would you partner with them? Why would they want to partner with you? So if there's other revenue streams, you can keep your hourly rate, if you will, low, because you're going to generate revenue in other areas, so partnerships, projects, initiatives, special launches, special events, stuff like that. So it's a really hard balance of understanding how much can I diversify my product so that I can make up all the revenues I need to stay afloat as a business, but also make it financially accessible by my customers. And I'll tell you honestly, most people that I knew in healthcare at the time when I first started said, yeah, actually, wow, that's really cheap. They thought that $35 an hour was really cheap. Our families did not think it was cheap. So you have to remember who you're marketing for. And, even to this day, we get pushback from sometimes our professional role the rec therapists themselves that say, I'm worth, you know, $55 an hour. That's great, but our customers aren't going to pay $55 an hour. They have limited funding dollars. So you've got to really understand your space and ways to diversify your product should you need to make it accessible. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
just it is tough though to make that balance. But I guess at the beginning, you know, you have to show that it is a self-sustaining,
Value. Yeah.
right? And
it has value, right? You have to be able to
right,
show that it's got value to the recipient, the customer.
right,
And
absolutely.
hammering out all of those goals and outcomes, for example, in your marketing material is also going to be really effective because
Right.
they don't know what they don't know, but you know what you've got and what it can add value to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's a
Well,
hard.
thanks so much. Yeah, it's great that the strategic, tactical conversations around business. It's great, and we can get into that all day. But I want to shift us back into some of the aspects of entrepreneurship that actually come from questions that were submitted
Yeah.
to today, and so this was a great one. And I'm personally curious to hear a social entrepreneur or the name of a social entrepreneur that you deeply respect and why.
Holy mackerel. That's a really loaded question because there's so many amazing social entrepreneurs and they're not necessarily famous. Like you just admire their passion and their drive. And that they're so in the pocket of the work that they do to make impact and sustain and make change. To me, that is like the most admirable social entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to even think like I feel like, you know, entrepreneurs are in the trenches, you know, like we're right down in the trenches doing what we love. And so I love entrepreneurs, period. I
Yeah.
love all stages of entrepreneurship. The very beginning stage of mapping out what your work's going to look like and what you think it's going to look like, and then revisiting 10 years later and going, whoa, totally different than where you started.
Yeah.
Like that excites me. And every entrepreneur has that fire in them.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs, I hear you. I know how isolating it is. It can be really isolating. And I just think it's so admirable that people push through those really awkward spaces,
Yeah.
get to where they want to be. 100%. So all of them. I love all of them.
I love that answer.
I
No, it's
don't have
great.
one
You know
in
what?
particular.
You know what? That's a great answer because it's all phases, all phases
Yeah.
of entrepreneurship and the people that are working within those phases
Yeah.
to make things happen. It's very inspirational, and so I'm loving that answer. The next question that came in through the from the audience is that it's about how do you compete with nonprofits who can deliver similar services at a lower rate?
That's a good question. Okay. That's a really good question. That must have come from a not-for-profit. So I think in general, I think it's about what you build and how you deliver it. And there's plenty of space for everybody. So if I'm providing, you know, if we as a team are providing, say, virtual group programs, lots of organizations are now doing virtual group programs, and that's amazing. There's nothing better than diversity and opportunity and access to me, as far as I'm concerned. So I think when it comes down to, as an entrepreneur, I have to explain the value of my team. And the value of my team is their skill set and their ability to do A, B, and C. And so whichever families decide to come to us because they want to pay for our services because of that skill set or because of the relationships that they've developed with our team, then that's great. And if they opt to go to a not-for-profit program to get the same kind of thing, then that's great too. For me, I'm all about inclusion. I'm not about exclusion. So if they want to come to our service or they want to go to a not-for-profit, sometimes not-for-profits can offer the service cheaper. Yes, they can. But I think it just depends on the service, the program itself, and who's delivering it, and then the relationship that the customer has with either or organization. And that's the best solution for them. So I guess I'm saying I'm not that much of a competitive space kind of person. I'm all about the healthy relationship space. And whichever way they go is good with me.
Yeah, yeah, super powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And the next question, it's around how do you approach or how do you leverage your social impact work? And I think what this question is trying to ask is, how do you leverage the value proposition of your services and what you do, and the social impact it has? How do you sh- communicate that so that you can sh- share that in a way that people can understand, and that you can speak to the social impact around it as well?
So funny enough, we don't do a lot of marketing and we don't do a lot of per se advertising. So leveraging what we do comes directly from word of mouth and directly from the relationships that we build within those services and programs. That is predominantly how we run business and how we have since 2008. I think I've spent a grand total of $12,000 in 13 years on marketing. True story. And that has given us international scope because of the ways that we engage with our audiences, partners, customers. Again, relationships, relationships, relationships. So for me, leveraging the value only comes from the great work that we know our team is doing in the community. Now, I know that some of you entrepreneurs will be like, but that doesn't pay the bills. So understand that we all have different goals as different styles of entrepreneurs. Some people's goals are to make as much money as possible. Some, depending on what you're doing, you're selling, merchandise, you want to sell as much as you can to make money. And some deliver services and need to deliver a certain number of services in order to keep afloat, right? I get that 100%. But truly, the leverage of value is coming from the relationship, not just with the customer, but everybody else that's involved in your business. And that is that interdependent framework that I was talking about. It's about the partners with David and his team. It's about the partners with the Jays Care Foundation and their team. It's about all of that that gives us the value for the service. And that's what keeps us going, truly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's extremely insightful, because it leads on to how you approach partnerships, and maybe share a bit more into your, how you approach partnerships from maybe the exploration discovery phase to actually finding alignment, and then doing co-creating together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did we lose you, Diego?
I'm right here. Do you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I lost the last couple of sentences that you said.
Oh, okay. Am I you able to hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah,
Perfect.
sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I was just asking, how do you approach partnerships from that moment
Right.
you start to explore the
Right.
potential of, to the
Yeah.
point where you begin to actually work on something together?
Right. So again, it comes back to diversifying the services that you offer. So to be honest, it can never be just one service. When we started in 2008, the primary service was in-home one-to-one services. And then we started realizing that families wanted their loved ones to come together with other people in the community to take part in group programs. So then we have to evaluate, well, what can we do to make group programs happen? And what do we need to make group programs happen? And who do we need to make group programs happen, right? We need space. We don't have space. We're a community-based organization. And we need people who want the same kind of thing in their space. So that's partnership level at the very ground level, starts from there. What's the need and how are we going to get there? What do we have and what don't we have? And then how are we going to make that come together? And then it's a matter of understanding the diversification of your services and what you want to provide. So when we started to do metrics work, metrics was about nonprofits getting funding, say, for example, from the government, but then they didn't have the capacity to actually measure the impact of the program, and they needed our skill set to help them steer the goals, the outcomes, and the targeted benefits. They would do all of the work, the development, the implementation, but they needed our expertise to then actually measure it and write a report, if you will. So we recognized that there was this gap between what we could provide and what they wanted to provide and what they needed and what we needed. So then we diversified and started offering this metrics service. And those partnerships start to stem into other things and other projects. And someone says, hey, Recreational Respite did this with us, and we would highly recommend them to do the same with you. And so the ball starts to roll. So it all comes from diversification of your services. And you can never just have one service that will kind of last you, truly.
Got it.
A stagnant service, especially in social enterprise, right? Because social enterprise is all about the community identifying what you do and the work that you do in the capacity and how that grows and expands and evolves. Evolution is crucial.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of just like just kind of, a couple of words back, you mentioned just the measurement of the social impact. And one question came in around, how do you approach measuring your social impact?
So I think, again, that comes back to it starts to come from social space. So like, who's calling us, asking us to work with us, and why? Like, how did they hear about us? What do they know about our service? So again, it's really it's not conventional business. Social enterprise is very different than old corporate model of business, right? It's all about who's in that social space and what we can all take from each other. And so that's how we measure the impact, is we start to hear from other fellow social entrepreneurs that say, hey, listen, we couldn't have, created this publication without you. Or we say, we couldn't have created this programming without you. Or we couldn't have provided this respite support without you to our customers, and vice versa. So that's how we measure the impact. It's not like the old corporate way of going ticky boxes about how much revenue we've generated over the course of last year. And was it more than last year? Or of course it's going to be different, because you're changing your services and your approach all the time as a social enterprise. All the time. It never stays the same. It's very dynamic.
Mm.
So your social impact is going to be dynamic too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Mhm.
And just have one last question, and then we'll work towards wrapping up. And the last question is a two-part question, and the first part is, how do you combat the question around revenue versus the money that you spend on social impact? And so I'll stop there, and I'll ask the second part after.
So I think, our service is in. So we have an hourly rate for one-to-one service, and we have a group rate for group programs, and then we have project rates, depending on what those projects look like. And so revenue in has to be enough, obviously, to pay our people, to pay our operational costs. So our services alone would not cover the cost of our operational costs if we only had, say, our one-to-one services, for example. They would cover the cost of our team members implementing that service and some program development, evaluation, all of the administration that goes with that, but it wouldn't cover the cost of my operational leadership team, which I need in order for us to keep this well-oiled machine moving. So those costs have to come from special projects, partnerships, and other spaces. So the revenue that we generate per se is constantly going back into the generation of brand new programs. So you're making enough revenue to stay out of the red, let's be honest, and to pay your operational team, but you're never going to be a millionaire necessarily, especially in healthcare, because you just can't charge enough money to make revenues, to be honest. The same with Kuji. I think I'm saying your name right. With your math programs, you know, you want to make enough money that you can serve those children because they need you. Trust me. I wish I had you around when I was in grade 7 and 8. But you're not gonna, you're not gonna make millions of dollars off of people learning more about financial literacy per se. But you're gonna make enough that you're gonna be able to sustain your business and your impact. And I think that's the most important thing.
Appreciate that, Amy.
Yeah.
And this question may be relevant or not, so I'll let you tell me if it is. But the question is around, and it's in connection to the first part, is how do you approach communicating that to investors if you have? There's the cameo that we were all waiting for. And so, how do you approach the conversation with investors if you happen to have investors? When it comes down to, the revenue and putting that more into the social impact side of your business.
Yeah, so we don't have any investors. We've done this strictly on our own as a private organization. Because of the way we're set up too as an incorporation, we don't have access to grant money. We don't have access to funding dollars, which makes things very complicated. And so we don't really have that approach. Yeah, so it's not really relevant for me, but there's probably maybe another entrepreneur that has experienced that has better insight. But we don't really have, we have organizations that come to us and say we want to partner with you, but they're not necessarily investors per se in the business itself, but they're investing in the services that we provide.
Right.
So
That's all right. So with that said, and I wanna wrap up, but maybe spend the next 2 minutes if someone wants to ask another question, make some comments, share some insights. Feel free to jump
yeah,
in.
I'm interested in other people's businesses too. Like, tell me what you need help with or what you need help. Yeah, Christine.
Hi, Amy. It's so nice to meet with you this way. I'm just at the very start. I'm a recreation therapist who's starting a business serving seniors who are living in the community and providing them with one-on-one in-home service, which is challenging right now during the pandemic. But I think going back to your very early start, where would you suggest I focus on trying to build awareness of my business and the benefits of rec therapy? Is it really with advocacy for rec therapy in the community, or trying to focus on one word of mouth relationship building? Where do you think that I should put my focus so that I can get those clients and
Spread the word.
yeah.
Yeah. So first things first, I'm assuming you have a really good understanding of the services that you will provide and the benefits that it will bring to your customers, because that's been the biggest barrier in selling support of any kind, whether it's rec therapy or otherwise. We need the families to know who we are authentically, the services we provide, the skill set that we offer, and how it can help. So that's first. And then it's more a matter of, yes, you can advocate for the role, but you really want to build your own brand awareness, who you are, why you do what you do. It's a little bit Simon Sinek, the big leadership guru. He's sort of all over LinkedIn all the time. But long before him, and I always believe people need to know why you do what you do, and people will obtain your service because of the why, because you care truly and you're passionate about the work that you do. In terms of business development, though, what's really important is to identify what type of seniors you want to work with. Do you want to work with those active seniors? Do you want to work with those more frail seniors? Do you want to work with individuals who have Alzheimer's or maybe early stages? We know those are really challenging spaces for caregivers. And once you identify that, I would then start connecting with the organizations that navigate those families through services. So say, for example, Alzheimer's, you want to connect with your Alzheimer's First Link coordinators, which, by the way, right now they have flex funding to help cover the cost of rec therapy services. Very interesting times. And you could connect with them and ask them specifically, like, you know, this is who I am, this is what I'm providing, these are my fees, this is how it works. And I hope that it would be a great resource for the people that you serve. So get in touch with those navigators, because they're the ones that are going to be looking for services to share. Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. Thank
No
you.
problem. Anyone else? I saw a couple of things in the chat at the very beginning. If I can just like, I don't want to call anybody out, but they were saying like they were supporting like Jeremy. I think we may have lost Jeremy. Maybe, I'm not sure if he's still online. No. And
Yeah, no, I think he's not.
Tyler, oh, he was with Jeremy. I'm not sure if he was there too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. They were interesting questions at the very beginning of sort of what they were hopeful to navigate people into entrepreneurship spaces. So
Yeah, I think well, I'm reading them back, and I think so. Well, Jeremy was looking to providing more entrepreneurial opportunities for the individuals they serve, and they
yeah,
work in the social service field where they support individuals with disabilities find employment in the community.
yeah,
So they were looking to learn a little bit more about that. But
yeah.
aside from that, I'll flip it back to the audience to see if there's any other questions or comments or insights.
Anything at all. And sometimes you don't know what to ask. You're just like, I'm kind of in a rut. It's COVID. I'm trying to launch this product or this service, and I don't even know where to start. And that's okay too. Those are really, really honest and really important questions, because like I said, we don't know what we don't know until we say, I don't know what I need, but this is where I'm struggling.
No, for sure.
Anybody else? No?
Well, in that case, we will start to wrap up. But Amy, where can folks connect with you or find you if they wanted to connect with you?
Yeah, so they can certainly email me direct. I'll just put it in the chat. And then our website, of course, is recrespite.com. And if there's any questions or, one of the things also that I do for fun in my own communities, I'm actually an entrepreneurship mentor, and I help entrepreneurs that are part of the Business to Bruce program navigate opportunities, not just service and funding opportunities, but sort of where they should go with their ideas and how they can expand or diversify or create services and products. So I love talking about ideas, and anyone that needs some help with that, I'm open. Always up for a chat about entrepreneurship and starting new ventures.
Yeah, that couldn't be more true. It's so great that um, you just make time, and I'm sure you're super busy to support the community of entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs. And so, with that in mind, we want to really thank you for taking the time today to hang out with us.
Yeah,
And
problem.
it's super insightful. Um, just so great to be able to hear your insights, your journey, your passion, motivation, and certainly hope that people are feeling the same way, and feeling even more knowledgeable about their journeys around entrepreneurship, and they have a place to connect with you. So thank you for providing your contact information as well. Aside from that, I think is there any last words, Amy? Any comments you'd like to make, or anything else you'd like to say?
Stay connected with each other, reach out, meet new people on LinkedIn. Sometimes you don't know how they can help you, or you can help them, or how you can work together. But there's sometimes these subtle, tiny little pieces of information, you're like, I'm intrigued by the work that they do, and I wonder how that would fit into the supports that I offer, or maybe I could be a good resource for them and they could be a resource for me. constantly kind of tap into that. The fellow with the service with math, the math program, I have some ideas. If you're interested, get in touch with me through email, because I have a few people that might be very interested in talking to you about your services and what that looks like. So definitely send me an email if you're interested, because there's a big push right now, as I'm sure you know, and I'm not sure, I think, yeah, you're still online, with the financial literacy piece being really pushed out, especially in Ontario. So Kuji, send me an email and I'll see what I can do to help.
That's amazing.
And only
Definitely.
him, because he's the one that talked, and Christine, but if the others, Michelle and Jonathan and Paul and Shiva, reach out if you like, and I'm happy to give some insight there too. But connect each other too. Keep connecting with people. That's important.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Thank you,
I encourage-
Diego.
Of course, yeah, of course, Amy. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening ahead. I also put my LinkedIn there for anyone that wants to connect, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and stay safe.
Well. Stay well and healthy
Well.
and happy.
Yes, that's right.
See everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Ken,
Hey, Diego.
do you want to stop the recording?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay.
My allergies acting up and I just...
Oh, okay. Well, I won't keep you too long.
There.